The cold was the first thing to truly understand me. It settled into my bones with an intimacy no one in the Silverfang pack had ever offered. The wind screamed through the mountain pass, tearing at the thin shift I wore, the same one I'd been dragged in, my hands raw from the coarse rope. Snow bit my skin like 1,000 tiny teeth. Behind me, the heavy wooden gates of my home, my prison, slammed shut with a finality that echoed louder than any howl. The sound of the iron bars sliding into place was the true end of my old life. They didn't even wait to see if I'd walk away. They knew I wouldn't survive. My name is Alara, and I am, or was, the daughter of a great warrior. My mother was a legend among the Silverfang, her wolf form a creature of moonlit grace. My father was a human traveler, a man of quiet stories who got lost and found something better. Their love was a crime. My existence was the proof. For years, my mother's shadow was my shelter, but a shadow disappears when the light goes out. She died last winter, protecting the very pack that now spat on her memory. Without her, I became a problem, a half-breed who couldn't fully shift. While others ran on 4 paws, a torrent of fur and power, I was stuck in between. My eyes would glow, my senses would sharpen, but the full transformation? It was a door locked from the inside. They called me broken, incomplete, a mistake. Alpha Kale, my mother's successor, made his decision at the council fire. "The pack cannot carry dead weight," he announced, his voice devoid of the warmth he'd once shown me as a pup. "The winter is harsh, resources are thin. She contributes nothing." The truth was colder than the snow. He feared what I represented, a challenge to the pure bloodlines, a living question to his rigid rules. So they dragged me to the edge of the Forbidden Wilds, where Silverfang territory ended and the realm of the Blood Moon Pack began. No one ventured there. It was ruled by the monster of the mountains, a wolf so savage they said his howl could freeze blood. His name was Cyrus. They used it in whispers to frighten children into obedience. Kale himself cut the ropes from my wrists. The blood rushing back was a painful thaw. "This is nature's justice," he said, his pale eyes empty. "The winter doesn't take you, the beasts of the wild will. Consider it a cleaner end than you deserve." I didn't speak. I saved my strength, my breath. I let them turn and walk away, let the sound of their footsteps fade into the wind's mockery. The gates did not reopen. Alone. The word finally had meaning. Knee-deep in snow, dusk bleeding the last light from the sky, I faced my choices. Lie down and let the ice claim me, try to find shelter and hope to outlast the night, or walk into the jaws of the monster's domain. A memory surfaced, my mother's voice, steady and firm. "The will to live is the first shift, Alara. It changes you from the inside." I turned my back on the gates that rejected me and faced the dark, tangled line of the forest, the Forbidden Wilds. Every step was agony. The snow deepened, swallowing my legs to the thigh. The wet fabric of my shift froze against my skin, a second icy shell. I focused on putting one foot in front of the other, on the burning in my lungs. I was a creature of instinct now, stripped of everything but the need to survive. Then a new sense cut through the sterile smell of snow, wood smoke, and meat, and underneath it, the potent wild musk of wolf. Not one, many. My half-shift senses screamed a warning, but my body, shuddering and numb, screamed louder for the promise of that smoke, for warmth. I followed the scent, a dying moth drawn to a fatal flame. Pushing through a final wall of frosted pines, I saw the glow. Not a village, but a camp of sturdy hide tents circling a roaring fire. And around it, wolves, not in human form, but in their full, majestic, terrifying glory. Their fur was shades of night and storm, their eyes reflecting the flames like gems. They moved with a lethal, quiet grace that spoke of constant vigilance. This was it, the Blood Moon Pack. I had walked straight into the monster's den. My legs, pushed beyond their limit, finally betrayed me. I stumbled forward, collapsing into the snow with a soft, pathetic crunch. The world went silent. The gentle crackle of the fire seemed deafening. I lifted my head, snow clinging to my lashes. Every wolf had gone still, heads turned in my direction. A circle of glowing eyes pinned me to the ground. I was too exhausted to be afraid. Let it be quick, I thought. They approached, silent as ghosts, forming a ring around me. Their heat radiated in the freezing air. One, a massive beast with fur the color of slate, leaned in. His cold nose touched my cheek, sniffed. I closed my eyes. Then new footsteps, human, crunching through snow with deliberate, powerful strides. The wolves parted without a sound. He emerged from in between the tents, and the stories did not do justice. He was tall, built like the mountains themselves, with shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of the sky. Hair as black as a starless night fell around a face that was all sharp angles and grim history. Scars mapped his skin, but it was his eyes that held me. They weren't the red of bloodlust from the tails. They were a fierce, burning amber, like trapped sunlight. He looked down at me, and his gaze wasn't of disgust or hunger. It was assessment, curiosity. "A gift from Silverfang," he said. His voice was a low rumble, like stones grinding deep in the earth. How unexpectedly generous of them. I tried to speak, to explain, but my jaw was locked shut by the cold. All that emerged was a whimper. He crouched, his movements fluid and controlled. The warmth coming off of him was a tangible force. He reached out, the back of his fingers brushing my forehead. His touch was searing. "Half frozen," he observed. Another few minutes and the story would have ended here. He stood and issued commands, his voice leaving no room for question. "Lyra, warm a tent. Rylan, blankets and dry clothes. The rest of you, back to your duties. She's not a spectacle." Then he did the unthinkable. He bent, slid one arm under my knees, the other behind my back, and lifted me as if I were made of air. I gasped, a small, broken sound. His body was a furnace, a bastion against the killing cold. My traitorous frozen form instinctively curled toward that heat. "Easy," he murmured, his voice vibrating through his chest and into mine. He carried me toward the tents. As he laid me on soft, deep furs inside a tent, as gentle hands began to chafe life back into my limbs, the absurdity of his words echoed in my mind. Safe? I was in the heart of the Blood Moon territory, cradled by the beast of the wilds. Yet, as darkness finally pulled me under, the last thing I felt wasn't fear. It was the first flicker of warmth I'd known since my mother's death. Consciousness returned slowly, wrapped in layers of warmth and the scent of pine smoke and herbs. I was buried in soft furs, my body aching in a deep, familiar way that spoke of narrowly escaped death. For a blissful moment, I thought I was back in my old bunk. Then memory crashed down. The snow, the gates, the wolves, the amber eyes. I was in the heart of the Blood Moon camp, in the monsters camp. I opened my eyes. I was in a small, neat tent, lit by a single oil lamp. My frozen dress was gone, replaced by a soft wool tunic and leggings. A bowl of rich broth steamed nearby, and sitting cross-legged by the tent flap, watching me with that unnerving, focused stillness, was the beast himself. "Awake?" he said. It wasn't a question. "Good. I was beginning to wonder if we'd pulled you from the snow just to watch you sleep for a week." His voice was less gravelly now, but no less commanding. I pushed myself up slowly, my muscles protesting. "Why?" I managed, my voice a dry rasp. "Why did you save me?" He tilted his head slightly. "Why wouldn't I?" "The stories," I whispered. "They say you kill anyone who crosses into your territory, for pleasure." A flicker of something, annoyance, amusement, passed through his amber eyes. The stories told by cowards to excuse their own cruelty. Let me guess. Silverfang cast you out. You're not quite wolf, not quite human. They decided you were a burden they could no longer carry. The accuracy was a slap. I nodded, looking down at my hands. They've been doing it for years, he said, a hard edge entering his tone, tossing out anyone who doesn't fit their perfect mold, the weak, the scarred, the different, always in winter when the world does the killing for them. He paused, his gaze intense. I make a habit of collecting what they discard. Collecting? He gestured vaguely beyond the tent walls. My pack. More than half of them were thrown away by Silverfang or packs like it. They came here expecting death and found something else. I stared, trying to reconcile this with the savage beast of legend. But the stories are useful, he interrupted. They keep the weak-willed away, but the ones who come here truly seeking shelter, who have nowhere else to go, they find it, if they prove their worth. And if they don't, his smile was sharp, but not cruel, then they leave. I'm not interested in housing cruelty or cowardice, but you, I don't think you're either. He stood, his frame filling the small space. Rest, recover. We'll talk more when you've found your strength. Wait, I called out as he moved to leave. What happens to me now? He looked back, the lamplight carving shadows into the scars on his face. That, Ilara of Silverfang, depends entirely on you. Do you want to crawl back to a pack that threw you away? Do you want to try your luck alone in lands you don't know? He paused, his amber eyes holding mine. Or do you want to stay here and become something more than they ever allowed you to be? He didn't wait for an answer, disappearing into the growing dawn light. His question hung in the air, more daunting than the frozen wilderness. Later, a young woman with silver-streaked brown hair and cheerful eyes brought me more food. I'm Lyra, she said. You gave us quite a scare last night. How are you feeling? Alive, I said, which felt like a miracle. Well, alive is a good start here, she grinned. I was thrown out 3 years ago. Too small, they said. Not strong enough. Turns out I'm plenty strong. I just needed the right training. Her story was followed by others. Rylan, the massive, gentle second-in-command, exiled for defending a weaker packmate. Kaelin, a scarred hunter, cast out for questioning orders that would have gotten others killed. Each had a story of rejection. Each had been deemed worthless, and each had found a place here in the shadow of the beast. That evening, Cyrus found me by the central fire. Walk with me, he said, and it was not a request I considered refusing. He led me to the edge of camp where the trees thinned, revealing a breathtaking vista of moonlit peaks. The stories aren't entirely false, he said abruptly, staring at the horizon. I am large. My wolf is unusual, and I have killed those who cross into my territory with violence in their hearts. Raiders, slavers. But refugees? Those seeking only to survive? He shook his head. They are welcome, if they have the courage to stay. He turned those piercing eyes on me. You have 3 choices. Leave with supplies, try to return to Silverfang, or stay here and join the Blood Moon Pack. What does joining mean? Proving yourself, he said simply. Everyone contributes. You find your place, you learn, you earn the trust of the pack. There are no passengers here. I thought of my failed shifts, my lifetime of being last, of being less. And if I'm not strong enough? He said, his voice softening a fraction. Strength isn't just about your shift. Rylan is our best scout. Kaelin reads tracks like they're telling him stories. Rylan can calm a panicked pup better than anyone. What can you do, Ilara? What did they never let you try? I looked out at the mountains, at the camp of outcasts behind me, and finally at the fearsome alpha beside me. The cold, certain death of Silverfang's exile, or the terrifying, uncertain chance being offered here. I want to stay, I said, the words firm. I want to try. Cyrus nodded once. Training starts at dawn. Be ready. As I lay in my tent that night, the sounds of the living pack around me, I realized the fear hadn't left. It had just changed shape. It was no longer the fear of the cold, but the fear of failing this strange, fierce wolf who saw something when no one else had. The fear of failing myself. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. Dawn came with a bite, and with Cyrus standing outside my tent. There was no gentle wake-up, only his voice. Up, now. The next few weeks were a blur of controlled agony. Cyrus assigned me to Rylan for combat training. The gentle giant was a brutal teacher. "You're trying to think your way through the fight," he'd grunt as I failed to block his wooden practice sword for the 10th time. "Stop thinking. Feel. React." I was sore, bruised, and constantly exhausted, but I was also eating regular, hearty meals. My body, long underfed and neglected, began to change, building lean muscle where there had been only weary bone. In the afternoons, I trained with Kaylin, learning to move through the forest like a whisper, to read the stories written in the snow. "You're a thunderstorm in a library," he said dryly. "Light steps. Be part of the forest, not an intrusion." But the most daunting lessons were with Cyrus himself. He worked on my partial shift. "They taught you this was a failure," he said one morning in a secluded clearing. "They were fools. What you have is rare, a hybrid form. You keep human hands and reasoning, but gain wolf senses and strength. Stop seeing it as broken, see it as unique." "Unique doesn't win fights," I panted, frustrated after another failed attempt to hold the form for more than a few minutes. "Then let's test that," he said. "Shift, now, and try to strike me." I called on my wolf. The world sharpened. Skents exploded. Pine, damp earth, the clean musk of Cyrus. Sounds clarified. The rustle of a far-off squirrel, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. My muscles thrummed with new power. I lunged. He sidestepped easily, but I had expected that. Using my human-like agility, I twisted mid-motion, my claws grazing his arm. A thin line of red appeared. Cyrus didn't flinch. He grinned, a fierce, approving flash of teeth. "See? In full wolf form, that turn would have been impossible. Too much momentum. But like this," he gestured at my half-shifted form, "you have advantages no one else does." Slowly, under his relentless coaching, I began to believe him. My broken shift became my signature. I could climb, use tools, communicate clearly, all while wielding a wolf's enhanced capabilities. It was exhausting to maintain, but the more I practiced, the longer I could hold it. Evenings were for healing lessons with the pack's medic, a serene woman named Senna. Her tent was a haven of quiet and strange smells. "Fenrir runs all newcomers ragged the first month. He needs to see your core, how you handle exhaustion, frustration, pain." "I feel like I'm failing at everything," I admitted, the words slipping out in the safe, herbal-scented dark. "Everyone feels that way at first," she said. "But you're here. You're trying. You haven't quit. That's the core he's looking for." One night, after a particularly grueling day, Cyrus came to my tent with a bowl of sharp-smelling salve. "For the soreness," he said, setting it down. He didn't leave immediately, instead settling on the fur beside my bedroll. "You did well today," he said, staring at the tent wall. "Rylan says you're determined. Kaylin says you learn fast. Senna says you have a healing's hands. That matters too." "Why?" The question tumbled out. "Why do you care? I'm nothing to you." His expression grew distant, then softened with a vulnerability that shocked me. "Because I was nothing once, too. Not what my pack wanted. I left before they could throw me out, spent years alone in these mountains, convinced I was better off. This pack, these people, it's not charity, Ilara. Every person I save is proof my old pack was wrong, proof that the discarded ones can become stronger than anyone ever imagined." His honesty was a gift and a weight. The mighty beast of the wilds was just another outcast. We were the same. "Get some rest," he said as he stood. "Tomorrow we work on endurance. If you can't transform fully, we make what you can do last longer." "Cyrus," I said as he reached the flap. He looked back. "Thank you for all of this." For just a moment, his stern face transformed with a smile that was genuine and warm. Welcome to Blood Moon, Ilara. Welcome home. That word, home, echoed in my chest long after he was gone. I wasn't sure I believed it yet, but for the first time, I wanted to. Peace, I was learning, was a fragile thing in the mountains. It shattered one crisp morning when a breathless scout stumbled into camp. "Alpha! Riders at the northern marker, from the Iron Tooth Pack. They carry a challenge banner." The camp, bustling with morning activity, froze into a tableau of tension. Cyrus's face hardened into a mask of grim stone. How many? "Just their champion and 2 escorts. They demand formal audience." A formal challenge. My blood ran cold. I'd heard of these. Single combat between Alpha. "Cyrus," I said as he reached the flap. He looked back. "Thank you for all of this." For just a moment, his stern face transformed with a smile that was genuine and warm. "Welcome to Blood Moon, Ilara. Welcome home." That word, home, echoed in my chest long after he was gone. I wasn't sure I believed it yet, but for the first time, I wanted to. Peace, I was learning, was a fragile thing in the mountains. It shattered one crisp morning when a breathless scout stumbled into camp. "Alpha! Riders at the northern marker, from the Iron Tooth Pack. They carry a challenge banner." The camp, bustling with morning activity, froze into a tableau of tension. Cyrus's face hardened into a mask of grim stone. How many? "Just their champion and 2 escorts. They demand formal audience." A formal challenge. My blood ran cold. I'd heard of these. Single combat between alphas. Winner takes all. I looked at Cyrus, at the new lines of tension around his eyes. The pack needed him. I needed him. The Iron-Tooth champion, a wolf named Boreas, was all coiled muscle and sneering confidence. He stood in our clearing as if he already owned it. "Cyrus," he called, his voice a loud bark, "I come under the old laws. Your pack is an insult to true wolf kind, a kennel for misfits. I challenge your right to lead it." Cyrus stepped forward, his presence seeming to expand, casting a shadow over Boreas. "You challenge me for a pack you call a kennel. Your ambition is as transparent as it is pathetic. The surrounding packs agree. Your experiment threatens the natural order. I will restore strength here." "You will try," Cyrus said, his voice dangerously quiet. "The challenge is accepted. Dawn tomorrow." The camp was a storm of quiet preparation after Boreas left. There was no celebration, only grim focus. I found Cyrus sharpening his knives outside his tent. "He's going to cheat," I said quietly, remembering Kale's lessons about the ruthless Iron-Tooth pack. Cyrus didn't look up. "I know." "Then why accept?" "Because if I refuse, it shows fear. It invites every pack with a grudge to attack at once. This way, it ends with him." He finally met my eyes. "Win or lose, it ends tomorrow." That night, he came to my tent. He stood in the entrance for a long moment before speaking. "If this goes against me tomorrow, Rylan will get you out. There's a valley to the east, neutral ground. You can make a life there." The thought was a physical pain. "Don't talk like that. You're going to win." "I intend to, but I need you to understand something, Ilara. These weeks, training you, watching you find your strength, it has reminded me what I'm fighting for. Not just survival, a future." He took a step closer, his amber eyes blazing in the dark. "I don't know what that future holds, but I know I want the chance to find it out. With this pack. With—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The weight of the unspoken words hung between us, more terrifying and more wonderful than any challenge. "Come back," I whispered, my voice thick. "Come back and we'll figure it out together." He reached out, his calloused hand brushing a strand of hair from my face. The touch was electric, a promise. "For you," he vowed, "I will." At dawn, the two wolves faced each other in the combat circle, the entire pack holding its breath. They shifted simultaneously. Boreas was a hulking, reddish brute. Cyrus was a mountain of night-black fur and primal power. The fight was brutal, a clash of titans. Boreas fought dirty, as predicted, aiming for eyes and hamstrings, using the churned-up snow to blind. Cyrus fought with cold, efficient precision, each movement designed to maximize damage and minimize risk. But Boreas was strong, and he'd come prepared. He feigned a stumble, and when Cyrus pressed the advantage, Boreas whipped his head around, jaws napping not for flesh, but for the small, silver-tipped claw sheaths he wore on his front paws. Poison. The crowd roared in outrage. Cyrus recoiled, a line of burning pain scoring his shoulder. I could see the poison working, slowing his reactions. Boreas pressed his advantage with a vicious snarl. My heart hammered against my ribs. This couldn't be how it ended. Then Cyrus did something unexpected. Instead of fighting the poison's lethargy, he leaned into it. He let Boreas think he was weakening, stumbling back. As Boreas lunged for the final triumphant strike, Cyrus dropped fully, using the deep snow as a shield, and surged upward from beneath the larger wolf's guard. His jaws closed on Boreas's throat, not to kill, but to hold in a grip of iron. The message was clear: submit. For an eternal second, Boreas struggled. Then, with a choked, guttural sound, he went limp. The fight was over. Cyrus released him, shifting back to human form, his chest heaving, the poisoned wound already angry and weeping. He stood over his defeated rival. "Leave my territory," he commanded, his voice raw but powerful. "Tell your alpha his gambit failed. The blood moon stands." As the iron-toothed wolves slunk away, Cyrus's knees buckled. Rylan and I caught him before he fell. The fear that had gripped me turned to a fierce, protective fury. They had tried to take him from us, from me. As Senna worked on him, I stayed by his side, my hand in his. His eyes found mine full of pain and victory. "I told you I'd come back," he murmured. "You did," I said, squeezing his hand. The unspoken bond between us was forged in the snow and blood of the challenge circle. It was no longer about survival. It was about something much more dangerous. It was about belonging. Victory, it turned out, was merely a prelude. The defeat of Boreas didn't scare off our enemies. It painted a larger target on our backs. We were the upstarts, the mongrel pack that had humiliated a pure-blood champion. Whispers became rumors. Rumors became threats. Scouts brought news of gatherings along our borders. The Iron-Tooth pack was shamed and furious. The Silverfang, my old pack, saw an opportunity to erase their mistake and claim territory. Other, smaller packs watched like vultures, waiting to scavenge the remains. Cyrus healed, but the tension never left his shoulders. Council meetings in his tent stretched late into the night. Maps spread out, voices low and urgent. Rylan, Lyra, Kaelin, and now me, we were his inner circle. "They won't risk another direct challenge," Rylan rumbled, pointing a thick finger at the map. "They'll try to starve us out, raid our hunting parties, pick us off piece by piece." "Then we don't give them pieces," I heard myself say. All eyes turned to me. "We hunt in larger, reinforced groups. We fortify our outer settlements not just with walls, but with early warnings, signal fires, runners. We make every attempt to strike us cost more than it's worth." Cyrus studied me, his amber gaze thoughtful. "And our greatest weakness? Our numbers are still fewer than a combined force." "Our weakness is also our strength," I said, the idea forming as I spoke. "They see a pack of outcasts, expecting us to be disunited. We must prove we are the opposite. We fight not just for territory, but for the right to exist. That's a fiercer thing to fight for than land or pride." A slow, proud smile touched Cyrus's lips. "Well said, Ilara. That is our strategy. Unity, resilience. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. I trained with Lyra on stealth and speed, my hybrid form proving perfect for silent reconnaissance. With Senna, I learned field medicine, how to staunch bleeding and treat wounds under pressure. The pack moved as one organism, a shared purpose thrumming through us all. It was during one of my scouting patrols with Lyra that we found the evidence. Deep, purposeful tracks at a remote pass. Not hunting, not traveling, scouting, and a scrap of leather from a shield bearing the sigil of the Silverfang. They were here, watching, planning. "They're closer than we thought," Lyra whispered, her face pale. We raced back to camp. The news sent a new chill through the gathering twilight. Cyrus listened, his expression granite. "They've chosen their side," he said finally. "So be it." That night, he called the entire pack to the central fire. His voice, calm and clear, carried to every wolf. "War is at our door," he stated. "No sugarcoating, no false hope. The packs who cast you out, who called you weak and broken, now come to finish the job. They believe our differences make us fragile." He paused, his gaze sweeping over every face, scarred, young, old, fierce. "We will show them how wrong they are. We will show them that the strength of the pack is not in its purity, but in its heart. We fight for each other. We fight for home." A low, unified growl of agreement rose from the crowd, not of anger, but of fierce resolution. It was the most powerful sound I'd ever heard. Later, alone with Cyrus at the lookout point, the silence between us was heavy. "I never wanted to bring war to your doorstep," I said, guilt a bitter taste in my mouth. "My past, it's putting everyone in danger." He turned to me, his hand lifting to cup my cheek. The touch was grounding, real. "Ilara, look at me. You are not your past. You are part of this pack's heart. You are part of the reason we fight. They aren't coming just for you. They're coming because what we have built terrifies them. That is not your burden to bear. It is our truth to defend." Tears I didn't know I was holding back pricked my eyes. He didn't see me as a catalyst for disaster, but as part of the foundation worth saving. "What if we lose?" The fear finally found its voice. "Then we lose together," he said simply. "But I do not intend to lose. I have too much to fight for now." His thumb brushed my cheekbone, his eyes holding a promise that stole my breath. "Stay by my side tomorrow, not just as a scout, as my advisor, my voice when mine is lost to the battle roar." It was the highest honor he could give me, not protection in the rear, but partnership in the fray. I nodded, unable to speak, my heart too full of fear and hope and something else, something vast and terrifying that had been growing since the night he pulled me from the snow. The calm before the storm settled over the camp. Weapons were checked, final plans were whispered, families held each other close. I looked at the wolves around me, my pack, and at the alpha who had given me everything. The outcast girl was gone. In her place stood a wolf with a home to defend. Tomorrow we would either fall or we would change the fate of the mountains forever. The long, cold shadow of war had finally reached us, and we would meet it not with a whimper, but with a unified, defiant howl. They attacked in the gray hour before dawn, when the world was silent and breath held still. They came not with a single roar, but with a pincer movement, Iron Tooth from the eastern ridge, Silverfang from the western woods. The signal fires blazed to life, one after another, stitching a line of crimson warning across the dark mountainside. The camp erupted into ordered chaos. Cyrus was already in the center of the clearing, a figure of terrifying calm. "To positions," his voice, sharp as cracking ice, cut through the din. "Rylan, hold the eastern pass. Kalen, the tree line. Archers to the high rocks. No one breaks the circle." I stood beside him, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. This was it, the theory, the planning, crashing into the brutal reality of snarling wolves and the glint of cruel steel in the weak light. I called on my hybrid shift. The world snapped into hyperfocus. I could smell the pine sap scent of our pack, the iron and leather stink of the invaders, the sharp tang of fear on the wind. I could hear the rustle of 100 bodies moving through the undergrowth, the low growls, the hissed commands. "Remember," Cyrus said, his voice for my ears only. "You see the field, you tell me what I'm missing." He was granting me the role of his eyes, his tactical mind. The trust was a weight and a weapon. The first wave hit. Iron-toothed wolves, brash and bloodthirsty, surged up the eastern slope. Rylan met them with a wall of shields and spears, our fighters using the terrain to funnel the attackers into a killing zone. The crash of bodies, the shriek of metal, the snarls and howls, it was a symphony of violence. From the west, Silverfang moved with more discipline. Arrows whistled from the trees. Kalen's hunters, hidden in the shadows, answered with their own, the thud of arrows finding homes a sickening counterpoint. I saw a familiar face among the Silverfang vanguard, Jarek, one of Kale's most loyal enforcers, the one who had laughed as they tied the rope around my wrists. Rage, hot and clean, burned through my fear. "Cyrus, their arrows are concentrated in the birch grove," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "They're covering Jarek's advance towards our southern flank. It's a feint. The real push is coming up the center, through the ravine." Cyrus didn't question me. He barked orders. A contingent of our fastest fighters, led by Lyra, peeled away to flank the birch grove. He shifted Ben, the transformation instantaneous and awe-inspiring. The massive black wolf threw back his head and issued a howl that shook the very trees, a sound of pure, defiant dominion. It was answered by 100 howls from our pack, a chorus that said, "We are here, we will not break." He surged towards the ravine, a shadow of death, and I ran at his side. This was my place, not hidden away, but here, in the storm. A Silverfang warrior lunged at me, his eyes wide with recognition and contempt. "Broken thing," he spat. I didn't answer with words. I dropped low under his swing axe, my hybrid agility letting me move in ways a full wolf could not, and drove my claws upward into the gap in his armor at his side. He gasped, stumbling. I didn't watch him fall. I was already moving, scanning, assessing. The battle became a blur of instinct and motion. I blocked a strike meant for a young Blood Moon fighter. I pointed out a weak point in the Iron-Tooth line to a squad leader. I fought with a cold clarity I never knew I possessed. This was not just survival. This was protection. Then I saw him, Alpha Tail, my old Alpha. He fought his way towards Cyrus, his pure white wolf form elegant and deadly. Their clash was inevitable, the old order against the new. They met in a whirlwind of fur and fury, two forces of nature colliding. I tried to move toward them, but a knot of iron-toothed warriors cut me off. I fought desperately, but there were too many. A heavy blow caught my shoulder, spinning me around. I tasted blood. As I struggled to rise, I saw Kale gain the upper hand, his jaws closing towards Cyrus's vulnerable throat. "No!" The scream was ripped from me. Without thought, I did the only thing I could. I reached for the deepest part of my wolf, the part that had always been locked away. I didn't try for the half shift. I threw myself at the door, not to open it, but to break it down. A searing, white-hot pain exploded through every nerve. My bones felt like they were melting and reforming. A wave of power, raw and terrifying, surged through me. The world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of scent and sound and fury. When my vision cleared, I was on all fours. My body was different, larger, covered in a pelt of smoky gray and silver. Not a full wolf like Cyrus, not my half-form. Something in between, but more powerful. I moved. It wasn't a run. It was a torrent. I crashed through the iron-toothed warriors like they were dry reeds, a snarl in my throat that didn't sound human at all. I hit Kale with the force of a falling star, knocking him away from Cyrus. He scrambled back, his white fur stained with mud and blood, his eyes wide with shock and something else, fear. He wasn't looking at the broken half-breed anymore. He was looking at a new kind of predator. I stood over Cyrus, who was slowly getting to his feet, his amber eyes fixed on me with stunned wonder. Around us, the battle seemed to pause for a heartbeat, both sides witnessing the impossible. Then, from the northern ridge, a new horn sounded, deep, resonant, and unknown. Every head turned. A new banner crested the hill, one we did not expect. The fight was far from over. The horn's call froze the battle in place. On the northern ridge, a line of warriors stood silhouetted against the brightening sky. Their banner, a soaring eagle clutching a mountain peak, was unfamiliar. They were not Silverfang. They were not Irontooth. They were the Stormcrest pack from the distant northern glaciers, reclusive, rumored to be fiercely independent and unimaginably strong. And they were here. A single figure descended the slope, a woman with hair the color of winter wheat and eyes of glacial blue. She moved with an alpha's authority, but she carried no weapon. She walked directly into the bloody no-man's land between the fractured battle lines. "I am Althea, Alpha of Stormcrest." Her voice rang out, clear and carrying. "We have watched. We have listened to the whispers on the wind. We came expecting to see a mongrel pack crushed by the true wolves." Her icy gaze swept over the Silverfang and Irontooth forces, then settled on Cyrus, who had shifted back to human form, and on me, still in my strange, powerful new shape. "Instead, we see something else." She turned to address the combined enemy forces. "You attack not for territory or resources, but because this pack dares to be different. You fear their strength because it does not look like your own. That is not strength. That is weakness." She pointed at me. "You cast out a she-wolf for a flaw, and in her defense of her new home, she has become something none of you could have imagined. What does that say about your so-called purity?" A murmur of unease ran through the Silverfang ranks. Kale, back in human form, glared, but his authority was cracking. Althea faced Cyrus. "Beasts of the wilds. We have heard the name used as a curse. I see a leader who gathers the shattered and makes them whole. Stormcrest will not fight beside you today." She paused, letting the weight of her refusal sink in before delivering the blow. "But we will stand between you and any further aggression. This battle ends now. Any pack who raises a claw to Bloodmoon from this moment forward will answer to Stormcrest." The ultimatum hung in the air, heavier than any weapon. The Irontooth Alpha, a brutish man I'd never seen, snarled in frustration. But he looked at his bloodied, tired warriors, at the unbroken line of fresh Stormcrest warriors on the ridge, and at the defiant, transformed creature I had become, standing with Cyrus. He saw a fight he could no longer win. With a final, hate-filled glare, he barked a command. The Irontooth wolves began a grudging, ragged retreat. The Silverfang fighters looked to Kale. His face was a mask of fury and defeat. He had lost, not just the battle, but the narrative. He met my eyes across the field, and I saw the final, bitter understanding there. He had thrown away something precious. Without a word, he turned and limped away, his pack following in silent shame. The sudden quiet was deafening. The adrenaline drained from my body, and the strange, powerful form I held began to waver. The pain returned, a deep, aching exhaustion. My vision swam and my legs buckled. Strong arms caught me before I hit the ground. Cyrus. He gathered me close, his touch gentle against my strange fur. "Easy," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You can let go now. It's over." I released the shift, collapsing back into my human form, trembling and utterly spent. The pack erupted not in cheers, but in a deep, resonant hum of relief and awe. They gathered around, not crowding, but forming a protective circle. Lyra pressed a water skin to my lips. Rylan placed a blanket over my shoulders. Their faces held not fear of what I'd become, but wonder. Althea approached. Up close, her presence was less icy, more contemplative. That was a first shift, not a partial shift, a true, primal awakening born of desperate need to protect your pack. It's rare. It speaks of a heart with depths your old pack was too blind to see." She nodded to Cyrus. "You have something remarkable here, Alpha Cyrus, something the North has needed. We will speak more of an alliance when the wounded are seen to." As she walked away to speak with Senna about assisting our injured, Cyrus helped me to my feet, supporting most of my weight. "What you did?" he began, but words seemed to fail him. "I didn't know I could," I whispered, leaning into him. "You fought for us," he said simply, and the raw pride in those words meant more than any praise. "You saved me." Back in camp, as Senna fussed over my various cuts and the deep systemic exhaustion, the reality settled. We had won. Not just survived, but prevailed. The immediate threat was broken, but as I looked at Cyrus, at the new lines of fatigue and worry on his face, I knew the true cost was just beginning to be tallied. We had faced the storm, but the winds of change were still blowing, and they had brought an entirely new power to our doorstep. The game had just changed forever. Victory was a somber affair. We had lost good wolves. The pyres burned for 2 nights, their smoke carrying our grief up to the stars. Senna's healing tents were full. My own body ached with a profound weariness that went beyond muscles into the very core of who I was. The first shift, as Althea called it, had left me feeling hollowed out and strangely new. Cyrus was everywhere at once, consulting with Senna, comforting grieving families, meeting with Althea in long, quiet talks. The Stormcrest Alpha had not left. Her warriors had set up a temporary camp at a respectful distance, a silent, formidable guarantee of the ceasefire. On the 3rd day, she requested a private council with Cyrus and me. We met in his tent, the maps of battle replaced by maps of the broader northern territories. "The immediate threat is neutralized," Althea began, tracing a finger along the mountain range. "But Kale is wounded in pride, and the Iron-Tooth Alpha is wounded in ambition. They will fester. They will seek new allies or wait for a moment of perceived weakness." Cyrus nodded, his expression grim. "We are stronger than they think, but a pack under constant siege cannot thrive. It can only endure. Which is why an enduring peace requires more than a single show of force," Althea said, her glacial eyes settling on me. "It requires a new story, a new symbol." She leaned forward. "Alara, your transformation on the battlefield was witnessed by hundreds. You are no longer the cast-out half-breed. You are the she-wolf who discovered a new strength in defense of her pack. You are living proof that the old ways of judging worth are not just cruel, but foolish." I shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. "I didn't do it to be a symbol. I did it to protect my family." "Exactly," Althea said, a hint of a smile touching her lips. "That is why it is powerful. The packs who cling to the old bloodlines rule through fear and exclusion. You must offer a different vision, one of strength through unity, of potential unlocked, not predetermined." She proposed an alliance, but not a merger, a covenant. The Blood Moon Pack and the Stormcrest Pack, publicly bound. A declaration that the North had room for different kinds of strength. That any wolf, regardless of origin or ability, who sought a true pack and was willing to uphold its laws, would find sanctuary. "It will draw more hostility from the traditionalists," Cyrus warned, but there was a flicker of fire in his eyes. The scale of the idea, the chance to build something lasting, called to him. "It will also draw the lost, the exiled, and the strong who are sick of the old hatreds," Althea countered. "You will no longer be a lone bastion. You will be the heart of a new way." The responsibility of it was terrifying, to be a symbol, to have my past, my very brokenness, held up as a beacon. I looked at Cyrus, seeking his counsel, his strength. He reached over and took my hand, his grip firm and sure. "We do not have to decide this moment, but know this, Alara. Whether we take this path or another, my trust in you is absolute. You are not a symbol to me. You are my most trusted advisor. You are the heart of this pack's courage. Whatever comes, we face it together." His words were a fortress around my trembling resolve. Althea watched us, her shark eyes missing nothing. "Consider it," she said, rising. "I will stay for 3 more days. My warriors can help with the rebuilding." After she left, the silence in the tent was thoughtful. "She's right about one thing," I said quietly. "We can't just go back to how things were. The world knows about us now." Cyrus sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "I never wanted an empire, only a safe haven. Maybe a haven needs walls not just of wood and stone, but of alliance and shared purpose. Maybe to protect our family, we have to help build a larger one." He studied me for a long moment, the amber of his eyes warm in the lamplight. "When did you become so wise?" "I had a good teacher, one who taught me that strength isn't about what you can destroy, but what you can build." The following days were a whirlwind of physical and political rebuilding. Stormcrest warriors worked alongside Blood Moon wolves to repair palisades. Althea and I spent hours talking of pack structures, of justice systems, of how to integrate new members without losing a pack soul. I found in her not just an ally, but a mentor. She was pragmatic, fierce, and held a deep, unshakable belief in the potential of wolves, all wolves. On the eve of her departure, she stood with Cyrus and me at the lookout point. "My offer stands. Formalize the covenant. Send runners to the scattered outcasts, to the packs sitting on the fence. Hold a gathering at the next full moon. Show them what unity looks like." She clasped forearms with Cyrus, a sign of deep respect. Then she turned to me and did something unexpected. She placed her hands on my shoulders. "The shift you experienced is a gift, but it is also a responsibility. It means your inner wolf is not half of anything. It is whole, and it is unique. Learn its language. It will guide you." With a final nod, she descended to her waiting warriors. As we watched the Stormcrest pack melt into the forest, a sense of daunting possibility settled over me. The path of peace, it seemed, was going to be far more complicated than the path of war. We had survived the battle, but the real fight, the fight to build something that would last, was just beginning. The moon swelled toward fullness, and with it, a different kind of storm gathered. Runners had been sent to every corner of the territories, carrying the message of the Blood Moon Stormcrest Covenant and the invitation to a gathering at the neutral grounds of the Stone Basin. The reaction was as mixed as the northern weather. Some packs sent cautious acknowledgments. Others, like the still seething Irontooth, sent back threats carved into bark. But a few, a precious few, sent hopeful inquiries. Small packs who felt the pressure of their larger neighbors, lone wolves living in the shadows, surviving day to day. Our camp buzzed with a new kind of energy, not the grim preparation for war, but the anxious, hopeful preparation for peace. We had to be ready to host, to defend, to present a united front. Gyrus drilled everyone on ceremony and security. Lyra and her scouts patrolled farther than ever. I worked with Senna to stockpile medical supplies, and with Rylan to ensure we had food and shelter for potential guests. My own preparation was internal. Althea's words about learning my wolf's language haunted me. In quiet moments, I would seek solitude and reach for that new power, not in a surge of battle panic, but with slow, deliberate intent. It was like trying to hold moonlight, elusive, shifting, but sometimes, for a heartbeat, I could touch it. I would feel that greater form waiting, not as a separate thing, but as a deeper layer of myself. It felt less like a weapon and more like a truth. The day before the gathering, a single battered traveler arrived. He was an older wolf, lean and tired, his cloak threadbare. He asked for me by name. When I went to meet him at the gate, he fell to one knee, not in submission, but in profound relief. "Alara," he said, his voice rough, "I may not remember me. I was a friend of your father's. My name is Theron. I was exiled from the Frostborn pack for refusing to abandon our elders to a hard winter." He looked up, his eyes weary but alight. "I have been wandering for 5 years. Your runner found me. He said there was a place where a wolf's worth isn't measured by the strength of his shift, but by the strength of his heart. Is it true?" My throat tightened. I saw in him the ghost of my own future if Cyrus hadn't found me. I reached down and helped him to his feet. "It is true, Theron. Welcome. You're home." The hope in his eyes was the first real, tangible fruit of our gamble. It fortified me more than any battle victory. The stone basin was a vast, natural amphitheater of smooth gray rock. As the full moon rose, painting the world in silver, wolves began to arrive. Small groups, cautious, keeping to the edges. Stormcrest arrived in full regalia, Althea at her head, a statement of unwavering support. Cyrus and I stood on the central dais. He wore a simple dark tunic, the scars on his arms a testament, not a shame. I stood beside him, not behind him. We were a pair, a united front. When the basin was as full as it would get, Cyrus stepped forward. His voice, amplified by the stone, rolled over the assembled wolves. "We are gathered under the moon, not by force, but by choice. You have been told many stories, stories of beasts and mongrels, of corruption and weakness. Look around you." He gestured to the blood moon wolves scattered through the crowd. Lyra, small and fierce, Rylan, a gentle giant, Kaelin, scarred and vigilant, Senna, calm and kind. "This is my pack. They were cast out, every one. They were called worthless. They are the strongest, most loyal wolves I have ever known." He then pointed to Althea. "Alpha Althea of Stormcrest, from a line of pure, ancient strength, stands with us. She does not see corruption. She sees courage. She sees the future." Althea stepped up beside him. "The old ways are breaking," she declared, her voice like cracking ice. "They break under the weight of their own cruelty. The covenant we offer is not about replacing one alpha with another. It is about a promise, sanctuary for the exiled, alliance for the just, and a shared defense against those who would rule through fear and purity." Then, to my shock, Cyrus turned and extended his hand to me. "And this is Elara, cast out by Silver Fang, left to die. She found her strength not in spite of being different, but because of it. She is the heart of our pack. She is proof that our greatest potential is often hidden, waiting for a place where it can bloom." All eyes were on me. My heart hammered. This was the moment. I wasn't just Elara the survivor anymore. I was to be Elara the symbol. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. I didn't speak of politics or alliances. I spoke from the scarred, hopeful place inside. I know what it is to be cold. I know what it is to be told you are nothing. I also know what it is to be found, to be given a chance. That is all this is. A chance. For any wolf who is tired of being cold, you don't have to be alone anymore. The silence was profound. Then, from the back, old Theron stepped into the moonlight. "I, Theron of no pack, pledge my loyalty to this covenant, to the spirit of it." His voice was clear and strong. One by one, others followed. A young she-wolf from a tiny oppressed pack, a pair of brothers who had been living as loners, a handful from a pack that had been sitting on the fence. It wasn't a flood, but a stream, a steady, undeniable trickle of hope. As the pledges continued, I caught a movement at the very edge of the basin, in the deepest shadows. A figure stood alone, watching. Even from that distance, I felt the intensity of the gaze. It wasn't hostile, it was calculating, assessing. Then, as silently as it appeared, it was gone. The gathering was a success. The covenant was born. But as we returned home, the memory of that solitary, watching figure lingered in my mind. Our new story was being written, and we had just drawn the attention of a very interested reader. The storm of war had passed, but the winds of change were still blowing, and they carried new, unknown scents. The success of the gathering was a fragile blossom. New members arrived steadily at Blood Moon, some hopeful, some haunted, all needing integration. Theron proved invaluable, his calm wisdom helping to ease tensions. Our pack grew, and with it the complexity of leading not just a haven, but a growing community. But the shadow at the edge of the stone basin grew in my mind. I mentioned it to Cyrus and Althea during one of our now regular strategy meetings, held via swift runners between our territories. A watcher is not necessarily a threat, but it is always a question. Strengthen your perimeter senses. The deep woods have many secrets. We did. Lyra's scouts doubled their patrols, yet they found nothing. No tracks, no scent, no sign, as if the watcher had been a ghost. The unease settled in my bones, a quiet hum of wrongness. A moon cycle after the gathering, the first strange event occurred. A prime hunting ground, rich with deer, was found empty, not hunted out, empty, as if the very animals had been scared away. No predator signs, no human traces, just silence. Then the spring that fed our eastern settlement ran cloudy for a day, then clear again. Senna tested it and found no poison, but a strange, faint mineral taste she couldn't identify. Minor disturbances, nuisances, but they felt intentional, a testing of our awareness, like a paw prodding a snare. The breaking point came with the dreams, not just mine. Others reported them, vivid, unsettling dreams of deep forests that swallowed light, of ancient trees with watching eyes, of a quiet, compelling whisper that promised belonging in exchange for something unnamed. Cyrus grew increasingly grim. This is not the work of Irontooth or Silverfang. They are blunt instruments. This is subtle. This is old. Old? I asked, sitting with him by his fire one evening. Older than the packs, he murmured, staring into the flames. There are tales, from before the territories were divided, of things that lived in the deepest woods that predated the wolf shifters, spirits of the land, guardians, or claimants. A chill that had nothing to do with the night air crept down my spine. You think the land itself is reacting to us? To the covenant? I think we have changed the balance. We have drawn many lines, of alliance, of sanctuary. Perhaps we crossed an older one without knowing it. The next morning, the watcher left a calling card. At the exact spot where I had first collapsed into the Blood Moon camp, a single, perfect white flower lay on the snow. It was a moon petal, a flower that only bloomed in high summer, in sacred glades far to the north. It was impossible for it to be here now. Wrapped around its stem was a thread of spun silver, finer than any work our people could make. Attached was a single rune-carved bone bead. Senna, who knew old lore, turned pale when she saw it. "This is a marking," she whispered, "an invitation, or a summons." From whom? Cyrus's voice was a low growl. She shook her head, fear in her eyes. The stories have no name for them. They are the keepers of the deep woods. They watch the comings and goings of mortal packs. They don't involve themselves unless they are intrigued or offended. The camp was thrown into a new kind of uncertainty. An enemy you could fight, an ancient, unknowable power, that bred a deeper fear. That night, the whisper in my dream was no longer vague. It formed words, clear and soft as falling snow. Child of two worlds who remade herself, you have stirred the silence. Come to the heartwood, see the root of the mountain. We would converse. I woke with a gasp, the words etched into my mind. The moon petal on the bedside table seemed to glow in the moonlight. This was no longer a vague disturbance. The invitation was for me, personal. I went to Cyrus, my heart a wild thing in my chest. I told him of the dream. His face tightened, but he didn't look surprised. "I have heard the whispers too," he admitted quietly, "but they have no shape for me. They are asking for you, Alara, for the one who changed. They could kill me. Or they could hold the key to understanding what is happening to our lands," he said, taking my hands. His were warm, solid. "I cannot command you in this. No one can. This is a path you must choose to walk or not." The weight of the choice was crushing. Go into the deepest woods toward an ancient, unknown power alone. Or stay and let the strange occurrences continue. Let the fear fester in our new, fragile alliance. I looked at the moon petal. It was beautiful and terrifying. I thought of the pack sleeping around me, of the covenant we were trying to build, of Theron's hopeful eyes. This strange threat was a shadow over it all. To protect my home, I might have to walk into the very heart of the shadow. "I'll go," I said, the words leaving my lips before I could second-guess them. But not unguided. The dream said Heartwood. Do we know where that is? Cyrus's expression was a mix of fierce pride and deep dread. "There is one who might." He stood. "We must speak with Althea. The Heartwood is a Stormcrest legend, and if it is real, then the Keepers are far more than just stories. And you, my brave, impossible she-wolf, have just been invited to tea with the gods of the forest." The journey was no longer just about uniting wolves. It was descending into the oldest mysteries of the land itself. The path ahead was dark, shrouded in ancient magic, and I was the one who had to walk it. The journey to the edge of the known world was a silent, solemn procession. Cyrus, Althea, and a select guard of their most trusted warriors accompanied me to the boundary stone marked on the ancient Stormcrest map, a towering menhir etched with symbols even Althea could not fully decipher. Beyond it, the forest changed. The pines grew taller, their trunks wider than cabins, and a deep, resonant quiet blanketed everything. The air itself felt older, heavier with the scent of damp earth and stone. "No weapon of iron or claw can protect you where you are going," Althea said, her glacial eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. She placed a hand on my shoulder. "Your protection will be your intent. You go to speak, not to conquer. Remember that." Cyrus stood before me, his usual commanding presence subdued by a worry he could not hide. He said nothing for a long moment, then simply pulled me into a fierce, brief embrace. It was not the hold of an alpha, but of a man fearing for someone precious. "Your courage has already reshaped our world. Let it guide you now. We will be here, waiting for your return." He pressed the smooth moon petal, now dried but still strangely luminous, into my hand. "Your invitation." With a final nod to the solemn faces of my pack, my family, I turned my back on them and stepped past the boundary stone. The difference was immediate. The pervasive silence wasn't empty, it was watchful. I felt the weight of ancient eyes, not from any visible source, but from the trees, the stones, the very air. I walked for what felt like hours, the path unfolding before me as if the forest itself was guiding my steps. I was not afraid. The dream whisper had been compelling, but not malicious. I focused on my intent, as Althea advised. I was here to understand, to protect my home. I was led to a clearing that defied reason. In its center stood a tree, but it was more than a tree. It was a living cathedral of wood, its vast, intertwined roots forming arches and caverns, its branches holding up the sky. This was the heartwood. At its base, a pool of perfectly clear water reflected not the sky, but a swirl of stars, though it was daylight. Sitting beside the pool were 3 figures. They were not wolves, nor were they quite human. They seemed woven of shadow, moss, and dappled sunlight, their forms shifting subtly at the edge of vision. One was tall and slender, with eyes like knots in ancient bark. Another was smaller, with hair like trailing lichen, and fingers that seemed to blend with the roots she touched. The third, who sat between them, was the most substantial, an ageless being with silverwood skin and eyes that held the patient depth of the forest floor. "Alara," the central one spoke, and its voice was the sound of wind through leaves, of water over stone. "We have watched your journey from the snow to the stone basin. You are a ripple in a still pond." I bowed my head, the moon petal warm in my hand. "You invited me, keepers. I have come to listen." "We are the echo of this land," the slender one said. We remember the first howl, the first pack, the first stone laid in boundary. Your kind draws lines. You claim, you fight, you build. We watch. The recent lines, the lichen-haired one continued, her voice a soft rustle, have been loud. The clash of teeth, the new alliance, they vibrate in the roots. They disturb the old sleepers. The balance is delicate, the central keeper, who I felt was their voice, said. The land tolerates the packs, but your new covenant, it seeks to change an ancient pattern. It draws many lost ones. It concentrates change. Change is a storm. Storms can cleanse, or they can uproot. I understood then. We weren't being punished. We were being assessed. The empty hunting grounds, the clouded spring? A test, the voice confirmed, to see if you would respond with fear and violence or with curiosity and care. You sought the cause. You did not burn the forest in suspicion. And the dreams? An invitation to those who could hear. Only you and the wise healer truly listened. I gathered my courage. What do you want from us, from me? The voice studied me, its star-reflecting eyes seeing everything. You are the catalyst, a child of both worlds who found a third path within herself. You embody the change. The land must decide if this change will nourish or consume. Therefore, you will undergo the trial of roots. A knot of fear tightened in my stomach. A trial? Not of combat, the rustling voice assured, of understanding. You will walk the memory of the land. You will see the consequences of unity and discord from the beginning. Then you will choose. Choose what? What you will truly protect and what you are willing to become to protect it. Enter the pool. Hesitating only a heartbeat, I stepped into the starlit water. It was not cold, but a perfect weightless embrace. As it closed over my head, the world dissolved. I was not myself. I was the forest. I felt the first wolf packs form, small family groups living in harmony with the rhythms of the hunt and season. I felt the first spark of greed, the first boundary drawn in blood, the fracturing of unity. I witnessed the great wars that scarred the mountains, felt the land's pain as ancient groves were burned. I saw the birth of prejudices, the casting out of the different, the slow poisoning of the pack spirit. Then I felt a new ripple. Cyrus, a young, scarred wolf choosing exile over corruption, his lonely howl a seed of defiance. I felt the faint, scattered cries of other outcasts across the years. And finally, I felt the moment I stumbled into the Blood Moon camp, a spark of desperate hope that caught on the dry tinder of Cyrus's resolve and burst into flame. The vision shifted to possible futures. In one, our covenant failed, crushed by traditionalists, the land returning to a tense, fractured silence. In another, we succeeded too well, our alliance becoming a new, rigid empire that claimed the forest itself, choking its wild spirit. But in a third, fragile thread of light, I saw it. Packs living in allied territories, the deep woods respected as neutral, sacred ground, a flow of wolves between communities, diversity strengthening the whole. The land in this vision hummed with a healthy, vibrant energy. The choice became clear. It wasn't about winning a war, it was about tending a garden. We could not dominate the land or each other. We had to find a way to exist within the balance. I surfaced from the pool, gasping, back in my body in the Heartwood clearing. The knowledge was etched into my soul, heavy and luminous. The keepers watched me, waiting. "I have seen," I said, my voice steady with newfound conviction. "The covenant must not become another wall. It must be a bridge. And the deep woods," I looked around at the ancient, watching trees, "they must never be claimed. They must be a sanctuary for all, a place under your watch where no pack laws run, a common ground." The three ancient beings exchanged a look that held a millennium of conversation. The central voice nodded slowly. The catalyst understands. The change you bring can be of the nourishing kind, but understanding is the seed. Tending it is the work of a lifetime. I choose this work, I vowed, for my pack, for all packs who wish for peace. Then we shall watch this new growth, the voice said. The tests will cease. The deep woods are closed to claim, but open to those who walk with respect. You may go, Ilara, Catalyst. Tend your garden. We will be watching. The journey back felt lighter. The watchful presence remained, but it was no longer probing. It was attentive. When I stumbled past the boundary stone, Cyrus was there, exactly where I'd left him, as if he hadn't moved. He caught me as I swayed, exhaustion from the trial finally hitting me. "What happened?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I smiled, a true, deep smile of relief and purpose. We have our blessing, and we have our limits. I have much to tell you. As we walked back to where Althea waited, I began to explain. We had won more than a reprieve. We had forged an understanding with the very soul of the land. The real work, the careful, patient building of the future I had seen, was about to begin. The telling took all night. By the fire, with Cyrus, Althea, Rylan, Lyra, and Senna gathered close, I recounted everything: the keepers, the trial of roots, the visions of past and future. I explained the delicate balance. The covenant could thrive, but it must respect the sanctity of the deep woods, the heartwood's domain. Our strength must be used for protection and growth, never for conquest over the land itself. Althea listened, her stern face gradually softening into awe. "The old tales are true, and you have treated with them. This changes everything. It gives our alliance a sacred purpose, not just political, but spiritual." Cyrus never took his eyes off me. When I finished, he simply said, "You walked into the oldest dark and brought back a map for our future. How do we begin?" We began with a new law, the first of the covenant. The deep woods are sacred and neutral. No pack shall claim them, scar them, or dwell within them. They are under the keep of the ancient ones, and to be entered only with respect and need. We sent this decree to every pack, ally and enemy alike. It was a statement that our authority came not just from strength, but from a deeper accord. Next, we focused on integration. Pharaon, with his patient wisdom, became the chief elder of a new council of voices, made up of members from each allied pack and representing different roles: hunters, healers, builders, scouts. Disputes were brought here first, resolved with dialogue, not dominance. I took on the role Althea had foreseen, a symbol, but an active one. I traveled with Cyrus and with Stormcrest guides to other packs, not to threaten, but to share our story. I showed my hybrid form, now something I could summon with calm purpose, not a weapon, but a testament to hidden potential. I spoke of the Heartwood's lesson, that true strength lies in diversity, in the interconnected root system, not in the solitary dominating tree. It was slow work. Some packs, like the Iron Tooth, scoffed and withdrew further into isolation, but others, weary of constant skirmishing and rigid hierarchies, listened. A trickle of newcomers became a steady stream. The Blood Moon settlement grew into a true village, then a bustling town, a living example of wolves from a dozen different backgrounds, living, working, and thriving together. Seasons turned. One spring morning, 5 years after my exile, a lone scout arrived at our gates. It was Jarek, the former Silver Fang enforcer who had once tied my ropes. He was older, wearier, and he carried no weapon. He asked for sanctuary. Kale's rule had become a tyranny, he said, and the pack was fracturing. He had finally seen the cost of purity.
Cyrus wanted to refuse. The memory of my bruises was fresh in his mind. But I looked at Jarek, seeing not just the cruel enforcer, but another wolf broken by the very system he'd served. The Covenant's promise was for all. He stays, I told the council. Under watch, he earns his place like everyone else. It was the hardest test of our principles, and it cemented them. Jarek, shamed and grateful, became one of our most diligent perimeter guards, his knowledge of old Silverfang tactics helping to keep us safe. The true mark of our success came on a day of celebration, the anniversary of the Covenant's founding. We held it at the Stone Basin, now a recognized place of gathering. Wolves from Stormcrest, from 3 newly joined smaller packs, and dozens of integrated lone wolves stood together. But the most astonishing sight was a small, cautious delegation from Silverfang.
They were led not by Kale, who had faded into bitter seclusion, but by a younger, clear-eyed alpha who had risen from the discontent. They did not come to join, but to sue for a formal peace and open borders. The sight of my old pack, once the source of my deepest pain, standing in respectful truce under the banner of mutual respect, brought tears to my eyes. As the feast began, Cyrus found me at the lookout point above the basin, watching the mingling crowds below, the fires twinkling like fallen stars. He stood beside me, our shoulders touching. "You once asked me what would happen to you," he said quietly, his gaze on the peaceful scene. "Look at what you have built, Alara. You didn't just find a place, you built a home for hundreds." "I had help," I said, leaning into his solid presence. "I had a teacher who believed in second chances. I had a pack with the courage to try. I had an ally who saw a different future." He turned to face me, the amber of his eyes glowing. They were led not by Kale, who had faded into bitter seclusion, but by a younger, clear-eyed alpha who had risen from the discontent. They did not come to join, but to sue for a formal peace and open borders. The sight of my old pack, once the source of my deepest pain, standing in respectful truce under the banner of mutual respect, brought tears to my eyes. As the feast began, Cyrus found me at the lookout point above the basin, watching the mingling crowds below, the fires twinkling like fallen stars. He stood beside me, our shoulders touching. "You once asked me what would happen to you," he said quietly, his gaze on the peaceful scene. "Look at what you have built, Alara. You didn't just find a place, you built a home for hundreds." "I had help," I said, leaning into his solid presence. "I had a teacher who believed in second chances. I had a pack with the courage to try. I had an ally who saw a different future." He turned to face me, the amber of his eyes glowing in the twilight. "You had the heart to hold it all together." He took my hands in his. "This garden of peace, it needs careful tending. It needs roots that go deep. It needs a partnership that will last beyond seasons, beyond challenges." My breath caught. This was not the fierce alpha or the protective savior. This was the man offering his whole self. "Alara," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "will you stand with me, not just as my advisor or the pack's catalyst, but as my partner in all things? Will you be my mate and help me tend this garden for all our days?" The question wasn't about power or politics. It was a promise of shared love, shared responsibility, a shared life. It was the final, beautiful piece of the home I had been searching for since I was left in the snow. Tears of pure joy streamed down my face. "Yes," I whispered, then stronger. "Yes, Cyrus, always." He pulled me into an embrace that held the warmth of a hearth fire and the strength of the mountains. Below us, the celebration continued, a living testament to the power of hope and unity. The outcast girl and the feared beast had not just found refuge. They had planted a seed of change that had grown into a forest of peace. And together, as partners, as mates, as the guardians of a new dream, they would watch over it forever.